That was the first Toy Story film released. Let's now get to the next installment of the franchise, which, in my personal opinion, is my favourite on a rewatch. Toy Story 2. So Toy Story 2 follows Woody and Buzz, who are now living happily with the rest of Andy's toys in Andy's new house. But after Woody accidentally gets broken on the arm by Andy, he ends up being left on a shelf while Andy goes off to cowboy camp. And suddenly, his mum organises a yard sale, causing Woody to have to rescue a toy that's about to get sold at the yard sale. But while rescuing this toy, Woody ends up being stolen by a greedy toy collector and toy store owner named Al, who takes him back to his apartment, where Woody discovers that he's actually a very rare cowboy doll in a collection called Woody's Roundup, which involves him, a cowgirl named Jessie, a miner named Stinky Pete the Prospector, and a horse called Bullseye. However, this collection that Woody is a part of suddenly is about to get sold to a toy museum in Japan, which Woody is a bit hesitant about. Meanwhile, Buzz and the rest of Andy's toys go on a journey to find Woody and bring him home. But not only are they having to deal with threats in Al's toy barn, but Woody starts to get a little bit of an intrigue in joining this trip to Japan with his new cowboy pals, as it's a way to help him not feel abandoned or forgotten. After a rewatch of the Toy Story movies, I cannot believe how much I have come to love Toy Story 2. I love this movie. I think it's better than the first film, it's my favourite Toy Story film, and it's one of my all-time favourite Pixar films. I think it might even be more of a nostalgic movie than the first Toy Story. I remember watching this film on VHS as a very young toddler over and over and over again, and then when I got the DVD, I watched that over and over again, and it's definitely my biggest experience with a Toy Story film. And I just think that after rewatching it for this video, I've come to find even more reasons to love it, rather than just nostalgic things. First of all, the animation definitely looks like it's getting a lot stronger. You can definitely see a bit more expression in the character faces, especially the humans. The humans actually look like real humans this time. Like, Andy's design definitely looks like he has more of a expressive eyebrow look and his facial expressions, and the character updates are fantastic. Some of the human characters look like the actors that are actually voicing them. Like when you see Al for the first time and you realise he's voiced by Wayne Knight, and then you look at his design and it's just like, oh, that's a perfect look for a character voiced by Wayne Knight. It almost looks kind of like him a little bit. I kind of like the attention to detail when it comes to that. But it's not just the animation that's evolved since the first film. The cinematic value definitely is at a greater scale when it comes to where the characters are looking and where the characters are at and the settings that these characters are at. Like, Al's apartment building definitely adds a bit of a high stakes, literal high stakes, for Woody, because he's trapped in a location where it might be hard to like get out of it or fall down the building without getting injured or even more damage than he already is on the arm. His only way to escape is through the vents, while the rest of Andy's toys actually end up taking themselves to a real toy store where they get to see many elements of where they could have been, and gives Buzz a chance to see where he came from, as it kind of continues a little bit from his discovery about who he really is at the end of the first film. And so I like the film continues that. However, one of the things that I definitely will say about this film compared to the other Toy Story films is that this is the funniest Toy Story film out of the franchise. It is so goddamn funny. The character interactions are made even more noticeable and clever, and I can't count how many times I just chuckled and like and just like smiled at some of the ridiculous interactions between the characters. The interactions between the Potato Head and Rex the Dinosaur and Ham are even more snappier and much more wittier than the first one. Because in the first film it is shown, but it's also a little bit slow and a bit underwhelming. Here, it's much more alive, more wittier, and more cleverly written, which is a great ideal. But some of the visual gags as well, like some of the stuff that Woody gets up to with the Roundup gang, is hilarious too. However, the animation for Buzz Lightyear, whether it's his regular self or the other Buzz Lightyear that he comes across, where it really shows the contrast between the two Buzzes. Because we know what Buzz is a bit more like athletic and more stubborn, and which one is the Buzz that we know. I love that the film shows a contrast between, and the interactions between the two are just comedy gold. However, what really makes the movie stand out compared to the first film is its many evolved elements in terms of story and characters. Mainly it's a combination between the two, because the characters and story really assist each other in terms of increasing the moral themes and interests from the first film. There are many morals and themes that are very interesting to think about and very well displayed by the characters and the way that the film is shown. In terms of stuff like trauma, fear of the future, and worry about being forgotten, the idea of living forever not being a thing, and preparing for that element. I really like that the film tries to explore that when you're thinking so much about whether or not you'll be a forgotten memory by other people or by the world, really it's the idea of like the inevitable that one day will fade away when you find out that you have people around you to help you through these certain times. And also the film tries to explore it through trauma when it comes to some of the characters' backstories and some of their experiences that affect who they are now, but they try to get through it every day with the company that they have. But they still feel the inevitable of being forgotten by the world and fear of being and alone. I feel like that some of the deepest moments of the movie is actually well displayed through those themes and telling us about how to both accept and be accepted at the same time. Something that Woody and Jessie are having to learn about. There's also some fair points about them worrying about being forgotten, which is understandable, and to a point where you end up kind of rooting for if they decide to go to Japan or if they don't. And since I'm talking about that, let's talk about the characters. Woody definitely goes through a much more evolved character arc compared to the first film. In the first film, it was the fear with him worrying about being replaced, but he learns that something added isn't taking away something. This film, he has a fear of being forgotten, because as soon as Andy breaks his arm, he tells his mum to put him on the shelf and not take him to cowboy camp. That was something that was just last minute, because Woody was just about to go with him to cowboy camp. And if Andy can make that decision to leave him behind so quickly, just by a little rip on his arm, what other stuff could cause Andy to turn against Woody? To the point where Woody ends up having a pretty terrifying nightmare about it, which is very dark for a Toy Story film, although that's really the starting point, because we've still got the third film to get to, which we'll get to that later. But it's the fear of the inevitable that really pushes Woody to question his identity, which then leads to him finding more about himself, learning how rare of a toy he is, and how much joy he can bring to himself and to others in a museum, which he starts to kind of take in this kind of information. And honestly, it's hard not to blame him, but he knows that no matter what kind of future holds for him, his friends will stay by him no matter what. And he also tries to help other characters along the way. Buzz, I don't think he goes for like a character arc of having to learn things, but I like that he actually tries to find out more about himself, because like I said earlier, he enters an aisle in Al's toy barn where he finds millions of Buzz Lightyear action figures, learning where he really came from, because it was said in the commercial in the first film that he came from Al's toy barn. So this is a chance to find his origins, and discovering a bit of a clash between himself and this other Buzz with the iconic utility belt, learning how delusional he really was in the first film and being like, tell me I wasn't this deluded. And then him taking tips from Woody in the first film about like these buttons or his laser being a light bulb, he tells this other Buzz. I like that he evolves more as a character. I did appreciate his determination and leadership throughout the film to get his friend back, but also looking out for team members. I think this might be my favourite movie for the Buzz character. I felt like that this film really shows how much more evolved he is as a character and more like straightforward with his ideas, unlike whatever that was in the fourth one. And the old characters are definitely more likeable and much more funny in this film. But when it comes to the new characters, these are some of the most iconic, especially Jessie, voiced by Joanne Cusack. Jessie has honestly become one of my favourite Toy Story characters ever, okay? And it's because of both the personality and experiences that is presented in this film. Like, just from her starting point, she's already an amazing character. I mean, she shows up as this very excited, energetic cowgirl that's just excited to see Woody and has so much energy, which honestly, online sources kind of say this, but Woody and Jessie kind of share a brother-sister relationship, and Jessie is the very energetic little sister, and Woody is the kind of nervous but still responsible older brother. And I like the chemistry they shared throughout the film, and Jessie's energy already keeps us engaged with her character. Then, as soon as we find out that she actually has a bit of issues dealing with claustrophobia and abandonedness, we see more layers and more sympathy towards her character, especially her backstory scene. I won't give it away, but this is definitely one of the most iconic and emotionally devastating moments in a Pixar film, with an excellent song that plays over it. And it's a very emotional scene that also makes us question how her priorities are at this point, because she worries about abandonedness, and she also is determined for this museum. Bullseye the horse is a very energetic and lovable comic relief. Even though he doesn't say a single word, you can see so much emotion and affection in his face. And it's so sympathetic whenever he gets sad, but also very aww when he gets happy, like a dog and stuff. And then we have Stinky Pete the Prospector, voiced by Kelsey Grammer. This is a character that, in my opinion, is definitely one of the most fascinating characters in a Pixar film, because we meet him and he's just this energetic and lovable man that acts as the voice of reason in the group whenever there's a bit of trouble or a bit of conflict between Woody and Jessie. And Pete tries to be the peacemaker in this debate, and we see that he has a bit of wisdom about himself, but we also kind of get the hint that there's something a bit mysterious about him. I won't give away too much about him, but it's a well-written development that, when you go back, you'll see some hints and clues that will later support what is eventually revealed later on. Al is pretty much like the kind of example of somebody who hasn't fully grown up and hasn't learned as much maturity as an adult yet, because he's willing to steal a child's toy just to make himself act like he's this big shot who's going to be rich. What kind of lad does that? He's definitely known for being one of those people that's still living in his mother's basement, because the fact that he doesn't walk to work, even though it's literally across the road, shows how stubborn he is about wanting to be in charge and stuff and all that stuff. And we just want to see this guy get his comeuppance by the end of the film. And there are still so many iconic moments that not only is fantastic representations of callbacks to the first film, with many familiar shots and angles being very well displayed, that is just nostalgic bait to call them back to the first film. But some of the newer moments are just as iconic as well, whether it's emotional or comedy and funny, especially when it comes to its climax. The climax of the film definitely shows a bit more cinematic value than the first one. And the villain in the last third is definitely a major surprise. I won't give away who the villain is, but this is probably my favourite Toy Story villain out of the bunch. I even think they're a better villain than Lotso. And again, I won't give away who it is, but it's a really well displayed villain that kind of helps Woody to reflect on the kind of person he could have become in the first film if he let the jealousy of Buzz control his moral compass. And the character development and them coming together to help each other in the end is just so wholesome, and it ends on a very interesting note that both sets up potential future Toy Story movies, but also closes this chapter of the trilogy on a well-ended note that is comprised of both optimism and realism. It's good. If I did have one problem with Toy Story 2, is that I do think that some of the new characters either weren't as memorable or could have been added a bit more to the story. I mean, as hinted at the end of the first film, there's a Mrs. Potato Head, which honestly I love the addition of her, because even though Mr. Potato Head is a stubborn know-it-all, the romance between the two really shows off his sensitive and cheeky side. I mean, it's adorable to see the confident, strict and bossy Potato Head getting all lovey-dovey with his love. I just felt like that Mrs. Potato Head could have been added to the adventure a bit more. We'd get to see more chemistry between her and Mr. Potato Head. But that's something that they do a bit more in the third film, so I guess I'll give it a free pass. But I do think that some of the new characters could have been added a bit more to the adventure element. But despite that, I absolutely adore Toy Story 2. It has amazing and well-written, thought-provoking morals and themes that, in my opinion, the reason why this is my favourite is that I personally found a lot of ideas and amazement in the themes the most in this chapter of the Toy Story franchise. But it balances well with excellent and well-written dialogue and humour that balance it very well. A very interesting and much more broad adventure than the first one, taking our toys to places that they haven't been to yet. Amazing characters, very evolved animation, still some good music by Randy Newman, and overall I thought this was a great time. I love the new character of Jessie and many of the other new characters, and I thought that this was a very well done sequel. And in my opinion, the many evolved elements of this movie is a perfect example of how to do a sequel. If you want to take a look at some animated sequels that are perfect examples of how to evolve the story, you either have to look at Toy Story 2 or Shrek 2. I think those ones continue the story the best. So, I definitely would recommend checking Toy Story 2 out. I absolutely loved it, and I'm going to give this film a 4 3/4 star out of 5. It was close to getting to a 5, and I almost was forgetting any problems. I didn't really see any problems with it, so I was about to give it a 5. If I had to pick a problem, it would be that Mrs. Potato Head and a couple of new characters could have been added to the adventure, because we're pretty much stuck with the same group from the first film again, which is even more funnier, but also could have been a bit more expanded on. But 4 3/4 star is nearly a 5 out of 5. I loved this movie, and I honestly think that it definitely should be checked out as a well done sequel.